My name is Elias Nader. I am married and the father of 4 children, 2 boys and 2 girls. Before my conversion, I followed Islam wholeheartedly. My family was part of a lineage considered sacred within the Muslim world. I was a direct descendant of the 7th Imam, Musa al-Kazim, which placed me in a bloodline that traced back to the Prophet Muhammad himself. My father was a highly respected sheikh, leader of one of the largest Islamic clans in the region, the Al-Nadir Almi. Our family was not only influential, but also lived quite comfortably. I grew up in this environment of tradition, honor, and devotion. For many years, my life faithfully followed the principles of Islam. From a young age, I learned that I should be an example to others, a benchmark of conduct and faith. Therefore, I took my religion very seriously from a young age. I prayed at the right times, fasted during the month of Ramadan, and sought to apply every teaching of the Quran accurately. But it was in the year 1987, during my military service, that something unexpected happened. For the first time in my life, I met a Christian. Although I knew there were Christians in Iraq, I had never interacted with any. My circle of friends was entirely Muslim, and my view of Christians was shaped solely by what the Quran said about them. To us, they were considered infidels, impure, and deceived. And it was with this mindset that I approached Karim, a young Christian who crossed my path at that time. But to my surprise, Karim was nothing like I'd expected. He was kind, upright, and there was something in his gaze, something that made me uneasy. Instead of feeling anger or contempt, I began to feel pity. I thought, this boy is going to hell if he keeps this up. So I made it my mission to convert him to Islam. My first strategy was to ask him for a copy of the Gospel. I believed, as we were taught in Islam, that Christians had tampered with the original scriptures. This would be my chance to prove the Bible corrupt. But before handing me the Bible, Karim made a curious request. He wanted me to read the Quran sincerely, paying close attention to the meaning of each word. This surprised me. After all, I already read the Quran every day, especially during Ramadan, when we used to recite it in its entirety. But he wasn't talking about reciting, but about understanding, about reflecting, about thinking. This challenge resonated with me. I realized that, although I knew the Quran almost by heart, I had never stopped to deeply meditate on what it said. And that's when I made a decision that would change the course of my life. I decided to seek out a trusted imam, someone from my own branch of Islam, to help me on this journey. I knew that if anyone else had asked that kind of question, they would probably be expelled from the mosque. But that imam had known me since I was a child and treated me almost like a son. This imam, who accompanied me so patiently, explained something I'd never considered. He said that to truly understand the Quran, it wasn't enough to just recite it. You needed to master classical Arabic, thoroughly understand its grammar, and immerse yourself in the surahs and the accompanying texts. And he went further. He said that to interpret everything correctly, I'd need to read at least 500 books on the surahs. 500. At the time, I confess I was scared. I thought about giving up. It seemed unattainable, impossible for someone ordinary like me. But something inside me, I can't explain it. It was like a restlessness that pushed me forward. So I decided to keep going, even though I was scared. I began rereading the Quran, but this time with a new goal: to understand, not just repeat. Every time a question arose, and there were many, I sought out the Imam. With each answer he gave me, 10 more questions arose within me. And so, almost without realizing it, I began a journey I never imagined I would experience. The more I studied the Quran and the most respected biographies about Muhammad's life, the more uncomfortable I felt. I began to notice contradictions, stories that made me uneasy, and that challenged what I had always believed. I discovered accounts of Muhammad committing murders, looting, things that deeply shocked me. And there was something even worse. I learned he had 63 wives. The first was 20 years older, and the last, a girl of only 6. It hurt me inside. How could someone like that be the role model? It was there, at that point, that something broke inside me. I couldn't go on any longer. Even through the pain, I made a decision. I left Islam. It was like tearing my soul apart, but I knew I could no longer support something my heart no longer believed in. Sometime later, I met Karim again, that young Christian who had crossed my path during my military service. He recognized me from afar, and with a slight smile, reminded me of the promise he had made, to give me a gospel. He asked me if I still wanted it, and this time, without hesitation, I said yes. The day before he handed me the Bible, something supernatural happened. I had a dream, and that dream changed everything. I stood before a narrow stream, no more than a meter wide. On the other side of the bank stood a man, but he was no ordinary man. His presence pulled me like a magnet. It was as if my soul recognized that gaze. I felt a deep urge to cross to him. When I tried, I found myself suspended in midair as if something invisible was preventing me from reaching him. I was desperate, not knowing what to do. It was then that the man reached out with a look of compassion and said, "If you want to come to me, you must first eat the bread of life." I woke up startled, confused, but deeply touched. Those words echoed in my mind. Bread of life? I'd never heard that expression before. It was new to me, but I sensed it carried a profound meaning. The next day, Kareem finally handed me the gospel. I picked up the book with trembling hands and went to a quiet corner. I decided to open it to any page, whichever way it came. Guess what I found? Chapter 6 of the Gospel of John. And the first sentence I read was, "I am the bread of life." At that moment I stopped. My eyes filled with tears. It was as if God himself were calling me. As if Jesus had come to me in a dream to confirm, "It is I." And from that moment on, something new was born within me. A peace I had never experienced before completely invaded me. I made my decision right then and there. I surrendered my faith to Christ. I believed his words, his promises, and I began seeking a Christian community. I knew there were many Christians in Baghdad, so I went there, determined to find brothers and sisters with whom I could share this new faith and perhaps participate in communion for the first time in my life. But the truth is, after that dream and my encounter with the gospel, my life turned upside down. I was determined to follow Jesus, but it came at a cost. And I began to realize this very quickly. I tried to reach out to some Christian communities, but I was rejected by all of them. And I understand people were afraid of me. It wasn't paranoia, it was reality. In the Quran, there are passages that order the death of those who abandon Islam. And one of Muhammad's most famous hadiths clearly states, "Whoever changes his religion must be put to death." And if that person left Islam to follow Christianity, then the burden was even greater. It was considered treason of the highest order. Soon, my parents began to notice something was different about me. And it was through my youngest son, just 4 years old, that they discovered it. One day, not understanding what it meant, he made the sign of the cross in front of them. That was enough to make them suspicious. They searched our house and found a copy of the gospel. It wasn't long before I was arrested and handed over to Islamic religious authorities. They issued a fatwa, a religious order, against me, ordering my death. My father, who despite everything always showed me love, did everything he could to convince me to give up on Jesus. He threatened me. He cried. He begged. He used every argument possible. But at that point, I had already made up my mind. I couldn't deny the one who found me even when I wasn't looking for him. Because of this, I was taken to prison. I was incarcerated for a year and 4 months. And let me tell you, the first 3 months were a nightmare I don't even like to remember. I was beaten, tortured, humiliated. They tried to break me in every way. But even there, in the midst of that hell, something sustained me. I remembered Jesus' words, "For my name's sake, you will be persecuted." That gave me strength. I knew I was suffering for him, and that gave me joy. Strange as it may seem. I was locked up in the worst possible place, the Secret Service prison, considered the most feared in Iraq. It was there that political and religious dissidents were buried alive, so to speak. All this time I was interrogated repeatedly. Always the same 3 questions. What church did you attend? What is the name of the pastor who accompanied you? Who was the Christian who told you about this faith? Thank God I never turned anyone in. I treasured those names, not simply because I wanted to protect people, but because I knew that if I opened my mouth, lives would be destroyed. After a year and 4 months, something unexpected happened. I was released, not because they changed their minds, but because, by the grace of God, a door opened. But there was a new challenge. In Iraq, it was impossible to live as a Christian, much less be baptized. I knew that if I stayed, my family wouldn't rest until they saw me dead. Maybe they'd stage an accident or set our house on fire. I no longer doubted anything. The only alternative was to flee. I chose Jordan. I went there with practically nothing. I was illegal, without a visa, without documents, but with a living hope within me. And it was there in the city of Zarqa that on the 22nd of July in the year 2000, after 13 years of waiting for this moment, I was baptized. What a glorious day. It was as if all the pain up until that point had been worth it. But the story doesn't end there. Sometime later, I went to the capital, Amman, to do some shopping. I thought it was an ordinary day, but I was surprised. I was surrounded by some relatives, an uncle and 4 of my brothers. They recognized me and approached me as if it were a friendly meeting. They asked me, with tense smiles, to get into their car. They said it was best to avoid attracting attention. I knew I had no choice. I was in the country illegally, and any trouble would put me back at risk. I got in the car. We drove for about 20 minutes until we stopped in a secluded valley, deep in the mountains, far from any civilization. They started talking to me with that, "Let's settle this peacefully" tone, but soon the mask slipped. My uncle, with a serious face, said, "Your father gave us a clear order. Bring you back, dead or alive." They tried everything to make me give up my faith. They argued, threatened, appealed to my family's feelings, but I was already too firm in Christ. There was no longer room for fear within me. I knew my life belonged to God, and even if it were the end of me there, I was at peace. I began to speak about the love of Jesus. I told them about the peace I found after baptism, about the transformation I experienced, about everything Islam could never offer me. I could see in their eyes that my words stirred something deep inside. It was then that my uncle stood up, looked at me fixedly, and said coldly, "If you don't come back with us, I'll carry out the fatwa myself." At that moment, with all the courage God gave me, I looked straight at my uncle and replied, "If you're going to kill me, then do what you have to do." He didn't hesitate. He pointed the gun straight at my chest and said with hatred in his eyes, "Your disease is Christ, and there is no cure for it." And then he shot. That first bullet, fired at point-blank range, hit me with full force. I thought it was the end. I had no way to defend myself, nowhere to run. I could only surrender completely to God's will. But right there in front of them, something supernatural happened. I heard a voice. It was a woman. A sweet, urgent voice saying, "Run! Run! Escape!" Without even thinking, my feet moved on their own. I began to run with all my remaining strength. I heard the shots coming from behind me. There were 5 of them, and they all started shooting. The sound of bullets slicing through the air surrounded me, some passing so close I felt the wind rip past my head. The scene seemed like a nightmare. But I ran. I ran as if I were being guided by something greater. After a few minutes, I felt a terrible pain in my leg. It was as if the world had stopped. I'd been hit. I fell, powerless, and lost consciousness right there in the middle of nowhere. When I woke up, I was in a hospital. I had no idea where or how. I just remember hearing a doctor talking to someone near the gurney. He said I'd been shot and to call the police. I panicked. I knew that if my name came up, it would be the end. So I respectfully asked the doctor to examine me first, without notifying the police. I explained my situation. I said that if it wasn't serious, I'd rather leave and seek other care. He looked at me for a few seconds and nodded. He performed the exam calmly and then reassured me. "You were hit only once, in the left leg. The bullet lodged in the muscle, but didn't hit any bone." At that moment, I felt such relief that I almost cried. I was alive, and I could go home. I immediately called Sister Helena, a nun who had been helping us since we arrived in Jordan. She sent me a taxi, and a few hours later I was home. When I arrived, 3 doctors were already waiting for me, along with my sister. They examined my leg and confirmed the bullet was there, lodged, but something very strange caught their attention. They managed to find the bullet's entry point, but there was no sign of exit. They tried to contact several hospitals to schedule surgery, but all refused to see me without a police report. And it was at that moment that something even more inexplicable happened. Suddenly, the opposite side of my leg, the side where the bullet should have exited, began bleeding profusely. The doctor frantically tried to understand what was happening, but he couldn't locate the bullet at all. One of the doctors, who was also a surgeon and a Christian, was puzzled. He said the bullet's trajectory didn't make sense. It wasn't a straight line, as one would expect. The next day, they sneaked us into a military hospital where this surgeon worked. They took an X-ray, and the result was even more surprising. The bullet was simply gone. The surgeon looked at me with a mixture of amazement and reverence and said, "The bullet entered through the front of your leg, passing through muscles, tendons, and bones, but inexplicably, it didn't cause significant damage. It followed a zigzag path inside your body. This is impossible to explain medically." After that episode, the fear grew. My wife, children, and I began moving every night. We knew my family was still looking for me. The fatwa against me still stood. A death sentence with no expiration date. It could be carried out at any time, anywhere. It was then, thank God, that France accepted our asylum request. A new beginning. France, this country I never imagined I'd visit, welcomed us with open arms. And this is where we live to this day. The fatwa is still in effect. And yes, there's still risk. But now, even with the danger lurking, I remain at peace. Sometime after we settled here, I started trying to contact my family. I managed to talk to some of my brothers. The best news I could share comes now. One of my brothers, with whom I've continued to keep in touch by phone, has surrendered his life to Christ. Today he is a transformed man, baptized, and follows Jesus with conviction. And you know what impresses me most? This brother was one of those there that day. Yes, one of those who shot me. The same hand that once wounded me now raises itself in prayer to the same loving God who saved us. This, to me, is the greatest proof that God truly protects, restores, and guides every detail of our story, even in the most difficult, most unjust, and darkest situations. He didn't just save me physically, he saved my soul. And by his grace, he also saved my brother. That's why the first thing I want to do is give thanks. Thank the Lord for this immense grace, for having reached the one who, in human eyes, would be the least likely. And here, I want to make something very clear. I do not hate Muslims. I know many people might think that, given everything I've experienced, persecution, torture, rejection, I should feel anger, but that never entered my heart. On the contrary, when I met Jesus, what invaded me was love. Love for those who have wronged me. Love for those who still don't know the truth. Love for everyone, without distinction. I don't hold grudges. I love Muslims. And it is precisely this love that moves me to speak out, to testify, to warn. Because what I saw, what I experienced, and what I learned within Islam made me reflect deeply on the weight of religions, especially when their teachings are distorted or interpreted without discernment. Therefore, my appeal is sincere, especially to those who follow Islam today. Read the Quran with an open heart. Don't limit yourself to what religious leaders or traditions say. Seek to understand for yourself. Reflect honestly. The truth is not afraid of being examined. Nowadays, with so much information readily available, it's possible to study, research, and compare. And when we truly seek, God reveals himself. I'm proof of that. And if there's one thing I've learned from all this, it's that God is love. He doesn't just have love, he is love. And where there's true love, there's God. This is the greatest and most powerful truth I carry in my heart. Thank you for listening to me this far. Thank you for allowing me to open up about my story, my pain, and my faith. I still live with a fatwa decreed against me, a death sentence that remains active with no expiration date. I live in anonymity. I hide. My life is still at risk. But I'm not here to accuse, nor to attack, much less to generalize. I know there are many good-hearted Muslims. What I denounce is the way certain passages of the Quran are used to justify inhumane and violent behavior. This needs to be said with courage, and it needs to be confronted with truth, but also with compassion. Because my story is just one among many. There are thousands of Muslims out there who have encountered Jesus through dreams, just as I did. These testimonies are multiplying throughout the world. Every day, more and more people are being touched by Jesus in a supernatural way. It's beautiful to see this happening. At the same time, the persecution of Christians in countries like Iraq, Egypt, and Afghanistan is a reality. Many are imprisoned or killed simply for believing in Jesus. Little is said about this, but we cannot turn a blind eye. And here's my final request. Pray for persecuted Christians, but also pray for those who persecute them. Yes, Paul, the apostle we admire so much, was once a persecutor. And it was on the road to Damascus that he encountered the love of Jesus. If God can transform someone like Paul, he can transform any heart. What moves me most about all this is seeing how God transforms even the most painful situations into miracles. I'm living proof of this. That brother of mine, yes, the very one who was among those who shot me, is now a man of God. He was reached, saved, he knew the grace of Christ, was baptized, and is living a new life. Only God's love can do something like this. Only he has the power to change a hardened heart, to transform hatred into repentance, pain into redemption. This reminds me of something essential. It all began because a Christian had the courage to give me a gospel. That's all. He didn't force me. He didn't threaten me. He simply planted a seed. And it was that seed that germinated in my heart. Therefore, I say with all my love, don't be afraid to talk about Jesus. Many people are lost, thirsty, walking in the dark, and you can be the light on someone's path. Sometimes all it takes to change an entire life is a word, a gesture, a gospel delivered with love. We are the outstretched hands of Christ in this world. Another very important aspect of my journey was my sincere desire to seek the truth. I wanted to truly understand who God was. I wanted to understand if the God of the Quran was the same as the one revealed by Jesus. And God answered me, not just with words, but with supernatural experiences, deliverance, dreams, protection. It's impossible to explain everything logically. But I know he protected me. That bullet that pierced my leg without destroying muscle or damaging bone, that was a miracle. God's hand held me. And as I like to say, the best bulletproof vest there is Jesus Christ. He is my security. He could have allowed my death on so many occasions, but he chose to keep me alive. And if he did this, it's because there's still a purpose. There's still something to be done. That's why I carry on, even under threat, with a firm heart. This story isn't just about me. It serves to make us think about our own faith. Have we been truly living the gospel? Do we, when we have the opportunity to witness, remain silent out of fear or shame? I come from a direct lineage of Muhammad. I lived Islam from the inside, knowing its deepest traditions, its pains, its demands. And yet, when I met Jesus, everything changed, because he is the Alpha and the Omega. He is the way, the truth, and the life, and there is no other. My testimony is an invitation to reflection. I was willing to die for Christ, but I know that often, in much smaller situations, some hesitate to even say, I am a Christian. But this is not the time to retreat. It's time to love courageously, even those who hate us. It's time to pray for those who persecute us. This is what Jesus taught us. If my story touched your heart, I ask you, pray for all who, like me, are being persecuted for following Christ. Pray for the Christians hiding in Iraq, Egypt, Iran, but also pray for their persecutors. Remember Paul. He was a persecutor, but he met Jesus on the road to Damascus, and everything changed. Jesus still appears in the path of those no one believes can change, and I am a witness to this. Lord, I also ask you, awaken in us the same thirst for truth that you awakened in me. May there be in every heart a sincere desire to know you, to seek you with all our being. I truly believe that this moment right now is a special opportunity. It's as if you're saying, son, daughter, come to me. I have secrets to reveal to you. I want to guide you. I want to ease your heart. I want to protect you. Let me show you who I am. I am Jesus. Amen, Lord. And now, with all the love in my heart, I turn to you, my Muslim brother and sister watching this video. I want you to know you are deeply loved by Jesus, and there is a place reserved for you at the great banquet, the wedding supper of the Lamb, just as he revealed himself to me. May he also reveal himself to you, because he is love, and truth is not a concept. It is a person, Jesus. I pray that every barrier between us will fall. May all prejudice, all judgment be destroyed. May a strong, true, and fraternal love be born in our hearts, a love that springs directly from the heart of God. Jesus, enter the lives of all those who don't yet know you, or who think they know you but have never had a real encounter with you. Thank you, Lord, because I know your desire is to make yourself known to everyone. You yourself said, "The light was not made to be hidden under the table, but to be placed on high and illuminate the whole house." And we, as Christians, are called to be this light in the world. Lord, make us living lights that shine not only with words, but with actions, with gestures of compassion, with lives that reveal your love. Now I want to extend an invitation. If you're watching this video, write in the comments the names of people of other religions for whom you'd like to pray. People you love and hope will find God's love. Let us present these names together before the Lord. He hears our prayers, and he loves each of them. And I ask you, which part of this testimony touched your heart the most? Have you ever stopped to reflect on the truth that guides your life? On what purpose you've been seeking? My story isn't just about conversion, it's about courage. The courage to listen to an inner voice and take a step of faith. Maybe today is your moment. Maybe you're experiencing doubts, struggles, fear, or maybe you're hearing that same voice that once called me. Come, do not ignore this call. Today could be the day you experience something new with God. But to do so, you need to ask yourself sincerely, have I truly sought the truth with an open heart? Would I have the courage to give my life for something greater as Joseph did? Yes, I am Joseph, and my life was completely transformed by Jesus. He protected me, he guided me, he saved me, and he can do the same for you. So, if this testimony touched your heart, share it here in the comments. Tell us what touched you most. We want to hear your story and pray for you. And if you know someone who needs to hear this message, send this video to them. Don't keep it to yourself. Spread this light. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications to continue following these stories of faith. We still have a lot to discover, and we want to walk with you on this journey. May God bless your life immensely with all my heart. Amen.